I'm Joe Lample. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a greener world, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. Spend any amount of time talking to farmers and you're sure to hear some inspiring stories. People working with their hands, people working with nature, and people working to better their communities. And while growing and producing food is often passed down from generation to generation, some of my favorite stories are of the men and women for whom farming is a second career. And there's a growing legion of farmers who are putting down roots and feeding this country after defending it in uniform.
In 1988, I enlisted in the Navy my senior year after my mother told me not to, because that's what you do as a child. You do what your parents don't want you to. And I could have been sent anywhere. I was undesignated. And after boot camp, I was able to go into aviation machinist mate, and that kind of set me on my journey for working on aircraft. Working on the flight deck is like nothing you can ever imagine, and you'd have to experience it to order to understand it. It's exhilarating, it's exciting, it's scary, it's dangerous, it's dirty, it's loud, it's hot, it's all the above. It's all the above. But the greatest experience I think that I've ever had Navy-wise as far as my career. We were able to have President Bush come out to the carrier a day before we pulled into port after our 10-month deployment. And I was lucky enough to sit down and talk with him, and it was an experience I wouldn't trade for the world.
The Navy afforded Julie Hollers a host of experiences that she'd have for life. But after a military career spanning 2 decades, Julie, by then a mother, also knew that she was ready to do something different with that life. So she came home to Verbotnik Farm in the tiny town of Vallecito, California.
I think I had the best childhood that any child could have growing up on this farm. It was barefoot in the summer. We had a pond to swim in, a creek to go in, fresh fruit and vegetables anytime we want. We learned to give change back at my grandparents' fruit stand. It was a mom and pop's fruit stand. They grew everything that possibly could be grown in this region as far as the trees, and then they did row crops as well. And they were famous for the Vallecito brand wax pepper. And it was my great-grandfather, Frank Canepa, that came to my grandparents and had a pepper seed. And he said, I think you can do something with this seed. So it started out real small, and this little journey that they had evolved into what they became famous for was a Vallecito brown wax pepper. They were producing anywhere between 15 to 19,000 pounds in a growing season, 35,000 jars that they were pickling at the time. It's a mild Italian wax, but it's the way that it's pickled. It's salt, vinegar, and garlic. They don't process it so the pepper doesn't get soft and mushy, and that's the original recipe from my grandparents. It has just the right crispness, just the right heat to it, just the right flavor, just the right taste. It's the way that they put them up. It was the way that they grew them. It was the right size when they picked them. And with all those scenarios, you just have the perfect pickled pepper.
But even though Julie's family farm was the only place in the world producing the unique Vallecito wax pepper, it wasn't enough to build an empire on. FDA regulations on the canning of wax peppers made it cost prohibitive to continue that side of the business. The cannery shut down, and the farm, being run by her mom, was in decline by the time Julie came back home.
When I came home, I saw how hard she worked every day, and I didn't see a lot of income coming in from it.
Then Julie found the Farmer Veteran Coalition, a group that facilitates collaboration between America's food-growing and military communities. And suddenly, Julie had a valuable ally in the fight to keep her family farm going.
We had basic hand tools. We had chainsaws, the pruners, the weed whackers, a handheld tiller, wheelbarrows, pitchforks. That's pretty much how we did everything. And I think we always thought how nice it would be to have something a little bit bigger, something a little bit better. I came across Farmer Veteran Coalition in 2011. Change in the direction that our farm was heading. I was doing my pepper seeds out of my bedroom, which you can do. I don't recommend it, but you can do it. I was put into the fellowship fund, and I was awarded money to purchase a new greenhouse and also a trailer because I didn't have a pickup. And then a year and a half later, I received a phone call asking what a tractor would do for our farm. And first I thought it was maybe some type of a joke, and unlimited potential what a tractor can do for our farm. And then a couple weeks later, I was notified that we received a new tractor. And talk about what a difference that made for our farm. Huge difference for our farm. A lot of our wheelbarrows got retired because of that. Where we used to till the garden with a handheld tiller, it would take us a couple days and it would be a lot of pain in the shoulders. 20 minutes, I was done with my garden. And it doesn't mean I don't have anything to do now, it just means now I can concentrate on something else. So it's opened up that door for more productivity from this farm.
The FVC's founder, Michael O'Gorman, is something of a legend in the farming biz.
In 40 years of farming, I managed 6 farm operations. In 1990, I got hired by a young man who started the first organic farm in Salinas Valley, the best place in the world to go get the farm. Took it to a $25 million a year company. At that time was the biggest organic farm in the country. In my last 20 years, I grew $200 million of organic vegetables, and from start to finish, I put the farms into production. I got them certified. I figured out the irrigation systems, bought the farm equipment, hired the crews, put together the planting schedules, figured out the varieties, how to grow everything, figured out how to produce things year-round, and just grew a lot of food.
But as it did for so many, things changed for Michael in the fall of 2001.
I was farming in Mexico on 9/11, and my oldest of my 4 children had taken a job at One Liberty Plaza across the street from the Twin Towers. So she was there at ground zero, ready to enter her building when the planes hit. And I was in Mexico trying to get through to her and my other children. The border got shut down to the U.S. I couldn't get home and see any of my kids for 2 weeks. We almost lost our farm operation in Mexico because we had $1 million of produce heading to the border each week that was turned around and went home to be dumped and thrown away. And it was just a really traumatic time for all of us in the United States. And for a number of years, I was looking for something to do, just to help make the world a little better. A study came out from the Carsey Institute at the University of New Hampshire, and it showed that a dramatic prevalence in our all-voluntary military of the number of men and women that were now coming from rural communities. And it really got me thinking about the farm crisis in the 80s and the loss of family farms and the loss of opportunity for employment and on the farms for young Americans, and what are these men and women going to do when they return home to those communities that we needed them. We needed our farmers, and maybe I could do something about that if I put my mind to it.
Jim Cochran ran a berry farm on the California coast and knew Michael by reputation.
He was talking about how he was trying to find a way for the vets coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan to reintegrate into society in a more friendly and welcoming way. And I thought, wow, that sounds terrific. And he said, you know, how about if we have a meeting about it, and we could pull in a few farmers from the area around here. And so I said, well, we could have it at my place.
Besides the 6 or 8 of our friends who were farmers, mostly organic farmers in the central coastal region, 3 women showed up separately, and all of them had lost their sons in either 2 of them in Iraq and 1 of them in Afghanistan, all within the previous year.
All of a sudden, the energy in the room just changed amazingly. It was electric, and we thought, holy moly, you know, and imagine these women are in deep grief about their sons, and they're sitting here at these tables, these blue tables here, and it was a very moving meeting. You couldn't walk away from that meeting without some tears in your eyes. That was the moment when all of us farmers and the women saw the power of Michael's idea.
There was something healing about the concept of farming and agriculture, a certain peace that comes with growing food, and that, you know, that it goes back to the Bible and the Old Testament to beat your swords to plowshares. I used to think that was an anti-war statement. This is actually a real life transformation, and there's a power to that concept.
Michael's idea was simple, really, when you think about it. It was about how to bring back veterans from the war in a welcoming way and give them something to do that gave them a sense of purpose, something that they could feel good about and that they could feel proud of. And that was something totally different from the way it was after the Vietnam War. And so all of us said, well, we're in.
And the Farmer Veteran Coalition was born. But for Michael, getting it off the ground would mean finding veterans who wanted to be farmers.
We've now given over $1 million in direct support to veterans in the real critical first couple of years of their operations. We never give money directly to the veteran, but we'll give money to a vendor. A third-party vendor will make a purchase on their behalf. So I spent the first year in my pickup truck driving. If I heard of a veteran that was interested in agriculture, I would drive 400, 500, 600 miles to go meet them and talk to them and see how I could help them. And by the end of the year, maybe 8 or 9 veterans at the end of 1 year. Now we have 8,000.
Sitting with Michael and Jim in the very room where that first meeting took place, it didn't take long for us all to find a mutual friend. You may remember our Season 3 visit to the Veterans Farm in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where we first met former Army Sergeant and Purple Heart recipient Adam Burke.
When I talked about 2008 and getting 8 or 9 veterans, Adam was one of them.
Adam had returned home from service and was receiving therapy after an IED blast in Iraq, and he had reached out to Michael about starting a blueberry farm.
Well, my story with Adam that unfolded during our interview with him out in the fields, and I speak a lot around the country, and I talk about some of the most memorable moments from episodes that we filmed in the past, and that one always comes up in the few that I talk about. And I'm not going to be able to get through it again today without probably choking up, but I'm in front of an audience talking about our time with Adam and how he explained how he came about to create Red, White, and Blueberry Farm. And the story he told us was that he and his wife were sitting in a food court at a mall.
And we were having lunch, And I had this one young guy over to the left side of me, and he said, you know, if you're not gonna finish that lunch, I'll finish it for you. And I looked down, and under the table, he had a 3rd ID, 3rd Infantry Division patch, and a duffel bag, and a sleeping bag. And I knew this young guy was fresh off the boat from Iraq and was living on the streets and didn't have anything to show for it. And it really tugged at my heart, and it was real tough. And I gave that guy that lunch. Man, there's thousands of guys coming back like this. It was then that the idea came to me that I grew up on a farm.
And Adam knew, you know, with his background in farming, he said, I have to follow through on this and create this opportunity, because he knew what farming could do, not only for himself, but for these veterans that were coming back home.
Adam went on to start Veterans Farm, where he's employed dozens of veterans looking for a fresh start after serving their country, just like he once had. But even Adam himself needed that first helping hand.
So I bought Adam his first blueberries. Yeah, so yeah.
How perfect was that? It was meant to be.
Yes.
Making that transition from soldier to civilian sometimes proves to be the biggest challenge of them all. That was the case for retired Master Sergeant Mike Reynolds after a traumatic brain injury ended his 18-year military career.
You came home and you know you're broke, but you don't know what's broke. Being a soldier is hardwired. You know, you can't turn it on and off. You got to have a place to go to, you know, and you got to have something to do. If you don't have something to do, then everything that you used to do just eat you up inside.
Unable to return to his pre-military job as a paramedic and firefighter, Mike turned to some dark places. But then he reconnected with Eddie Brannon, a local pastor who also ran a beef farm outside Atlanta.
And one Sunday morning, he came up to me after church, and he always called me Preacher Man. He said, Preacher Man, I know you got a farm. Do you ever need any help on the farm? I said, gosh, I need help all the time, Mike. But my farm's a small farm, and I just got about 35 head of cattle, 40, and I said, I don't make enough money to pay someone to do the work, and he looked at the floor the whole time. He said, I got to find a purpose. I don't have a purpose. And I said, Mike, see you in the morning at 8 o'clock. You meet me at the farm at 8 o'clock in the morning. And he's been calling me boss man ever since then.
That started a 2-year working relationship on Eddie's farm, where both men got the help they needed.
You can think about the bad, or you think about the good, and if you make it inconvenient to think about the bad, it makes it easier to think about the good. So you can either think about what happened, you know, or you can think about go feed cows, you know. Don't get stepped on.
My goodness, he worked on the tractors, he delivered calves. He just, I began following him around, you know, and shadowing him because I learned a lot from him. But, you know, I began to see Mike had found purpose in his life again. Mike has got a farm now.
We kind of went from me trying to find out and learn a little bit about farming to now we're a farming family. So you know, unfortunately, you know, I didn't come from farming family, you know, and so I didn't have a bunch of equipment and stuff. And you can kind of afford to buy the farm, or you can afford to buy the equipment, but you can't afford to do both, you know. And so you know, I got lucky because, you know, I mean, he says you buy the farm and you can use, and told me I could use his stuff, you know, until just gradually, you know, could gradually, you know, get our own stuff, you know.
You know, I look back and I've done so little, but I'm able now to furnish Mike with the equipment that he can't afford to buy. And Mike, in turn, I believe one day, soon, he's going to be mentoring a veteran farmer at his farm. And then I believe Mike will find somebody else to come back out here and to help me on my farm. But the thing with the Farmer Veteran Coalition, it's just so awesome to see some of those men, to hear the story of where they came from and how they've gotten into farming, various types of farming, and how they are so excited and how they have a purpose in life and how they're now at the point to where they can give back to someone else to help them find their purpose.
You don't want to walk around and say, hey, I'm Mike, the disabled veteran, you know? You want to be, or I'm Mike that used to be the soldier, or I'm Mike that used to be a paramedic, or I'm Mike that used to be a fireman, you know? Or you know, I'm Mike that used to remember everybody in my little girl's Sunday school class name, you know? You won't be able to say, you know, I'm Mike something, you know? And so now I can say, I'm Mike the farmer.
There's a power one gets from doing something that is real and necessary. And, you know, so the farmer veterans in our program have successively done the two most real and most necessary things that they can see out there. It makes for powerful people. Farming's not an easy profession. And interestingly, it was the veterans themselves, was the first veteran I worked with, that turned to me one day and said, Michael, we didn't go in the military because it was easy. We want to farm because it's difficult. We're attracted to the challenge. And what I've really seen is that what's really works for the veterans is in agriculture is they find a sense of purpose as great and as encompassing, as meaningful, and as difficult as it was serving in the military.
It has been an honor to meet these heroes and share their stories with you. But there are thousands more men and women out there who have already served our country once and would love nothing more than to serve it again on our nation's farms. If you're a veteran or know somebody that would be interested in more information on the Farmer Veteran Coalition, we have that information on our website under the show notes for this episode. The website address, it's the same as our show name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. I'm Joe Lample. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World. I'm Joe Lample. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world. and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a greener world, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. The concrete jungle. It's a catchy nickname for any major metropolitan area. But the truth is, between all the construction and the hustle and bustle and the traffic and the noise, the city street is pretty much the last place that you would expect anything to grow, let alone be base operations for one of the country's most influential urban farming leaders today. The kind of visionary who counts Sir Richard Branson and Oprah Winfrey and President Barack Obama and the Pope as fans. Yes, we've been to rooftop gardens and we've met a lot of urban farmers, but growing a greener world has never taken you to any place like the Green Bronx Machine before, and you've never met anyone quite like the man behind it.
My name is Stephen Ritz, and I am and remain CEO, Chief Eternal Optimist of Bronx County, and the founder of Green Bronx Machine.
The Bronx, 42 square miles of the toughest streets in the country. Almost 1.5 million people call this part of New York City home, with some figures placing nearly a third of them below the poverty line. It's here, in the poorest congressional district in America, that you'll find Community School 55. CS 55 would seem to be essentially the worst soil possible for anything to thrive in. Whether you're talking about edible crops, impressionable young boys and girls, or least likely of all, a global gardening crusade. But that's exactly what's happening here, thanks to Stephen Ritz, a kid from the South Bronx who became a teacher, moved back home, and set out to make a difference.
Well, realize I'm on my third generation of students since the early 80s, but teaching has changed in so many ways. In the old days, you just needed to be a big, loud voice in the room, big, commanding voice. You know, this was pre-internet. This was pre-school libraries. There was, different levels of accountability. Now the internet has changed so much, media has changed so much, and there's a far greater focus on accountability, on metrics and test scores, some of it for the better, some of it for the worse. I have this fundamental belief that children should not have to leave their neighborhood to live, learn, and earn in a better one. That people shouldn't have to leave their neighborhood to live, learn, and earn in a better one. And that we can be one city united, this incredible kaleidoscope, making an incredible vision. Farming happened by mistake. Literally, after the millennium, someone gifted me a box of daffodil bulbs, and I didn't know what they were. And I took this box of daffodil bulbs, if you will, and hid it behind a radiator in an old classroom. Lo and behold, the steam from that radiator forced those bulbs, and one day there was a fight in class with these 17 older age undercredited kids. And they were looking behind the radiator for something to get and something to grab, and there were hundreds and hundreds of flowers that were just blooming there, and it was like an epiphany, and it was the most de-escalating moment in the history of my career. The boys wanted to give them to girls. The girls wanted to take them and give them to their parents and sell them. And out of this turbulent atmosphere came this moment of peace and tranquility and beautiful flowers. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And these kids wanted to be a part of something. So we started doing landscaping and ornamental gardening in neighborhoods to kind of combat crime. We were taking underutilized spaces and turning them into productive, aspirational places. And kids who had never succeeded could get into a garden and one day get down, get dirty, come together and succeed and leave a place day by day better than we found it the day before, the moment before, the minute before. And I realized we were onto something.
That something eventually became the Green Bronx Machine, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the lives of inner-city youth through gardening in the classroom. And through his tireless efforts, Stephen is responsible for growing a lot more than fruits and vegetables.
When I started this program with targeted youth in high school, we moved attendance from 40% attendance to 93% daily attendance, and realized not only do my kids benefit when they're in school, everybody benefits when there's 93% daily attendance. We had year after year after year of 100% passing rate on New York State science exams. That's awesome. 100% of my kids graduated and went on to post-secondary training or a living wage job. And in a community that has 25% unemployment and God knows how much chronic underemployment, that's meaningful work. Since we've started in this school, behavioral incidents and out-of-class time has been reduced by 50%. That means kids are learning, teachers are teaching, kids are doing what they dreamed to do. Kids who were running the halls for weeks at a time are now working diligently to get in here, to ride the bicycle blender, to make themselves a healthy smoothie for 30 seconds. We have upwards of 50 to 100 children showing up daily for the privilege of gardening here in the South Bronx. We have one of the most productive outdoor soil gardens per square foot in all of New York City. And in this very classroom, 4 stories up, using our Tower Garden technology, we have grown enough salad to feed every single student in this school a healthy meal that they grew using 90% less water in 90% less space. 35,000 pounds of vegetables later, my favorite crop is organically grown citizens, graduates, members of the middle class, kids who are going to college, kids who aren't going to jail. Yeah, I love kale and arugula, but I love me some happy, healthy kids who enjoy coming to school and eating their fruits and vegetables and bringing them home to mom and dad. That's what this is about. So if they grow it, they eat it. I have kids who love kale. I have kids who love spinach. And that's awesome. In a community where it's easier to get liquor than lettuce, the fact that we are growing food organically here, both inside and out, is game-changing.
And Stephen's not the only one who thinks what's happening at CS55 is revolutionary. The guy with the wacky bow ties routinely has some pretty heavy hitters seeking him out.
I met Steve at a food conference, a sort of a changing food conference. We were both there speaking on the future of food and how to maybe improve the way people think about food and what they eat. So as you know, Steve is a very electrifying speaker, and I went up to him afterwards and said I'd like to work with him. And at the time, I was the pastry chef at the White House, very involved in Mrs. Obama's Let's Move campaign. And we hatched a plan right then and there for him to bring some kids down to the White House and see the White House garden.
Now, thanks to those early interactions with Stephen, Bill Yossis is an integral part of the regular curriculum at CS55.
After I left the White House, there were a very wide range of possibilities open to me. But this is one that I chose in particular, is working with kids around food and cooking. We call it stealth health. We never talk about health. We never say eat your vegetables. They hear that enough, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but we want to try a different tack. We introduce the vegetable or the healthy recipe to them in a way that talks about the botany, the biology, the history, the geography, everything but whether you should eat it or not. We make this vegetable come alive for them. We make it something that they really own and have ownership over, and it becomes theirs. So when they know this whole story and they identify like a character in a book, then they're the first ones to say, but can I eat it? They know that this little seed that they see planted in the spring turns into this huge plant 2 months later. And they want to know what that story is. So it's a compelling story, it's a fantasy for them that is very, very real, and that they can experience by eating it, by absorbing it, and by truly owning it. I was privileged enough to work at the White House and cook for the great leaders of the world. It's something that is a great honor every day you walk into those gates, that house is a symbol of our democracy, but the people who are really public servants, they are interested in the one-on-one. And that's why I became involved with Steve here at CS55. He's a fantastic leader, a visionary in how we get that one-on-one. So long as I can look in the kids' eyes and see that they're going to try today cooking, and they're going to put new vegetables in that pot that they've never even thought of before, and they're going to stir it up. They're distracted by the heat and the smoke and the smells and the everything, and they're going to sit down and they're going to eat it, and it's going to be an experience that they'll remember for a very long time. Good cook.
You know what I like?
Okay.
I feel like this is eating across the rainbow.
It is. Look at all the rainbow colors there. Okay, let's put it in here. It's nice and warm. Nice and cooked through. Fantastic.
So, it's graduation day.
Yeah, it's graduation.
I hear a little bit of relief there, but, I mean, you have had so many students coming in and out of your classroom over the culmination of this school year. Do you ever stop and contemplate the message or what you're trying to leave with them? I mean, some of these kids aren't coming back. They're graduating from this school and moving on. Do you think about, hopefully, the seed that you planted? What is that?
Well, today we saw them celebrate. This was their day. And I don't see this as the end. I see this as the beginning of a new beginning. You know, we literally celebrated incredible test scores this year. Kids aspiring to things and places they've never imagined. For them, they're growing up. It's exactly the life cycle that we talk about. They're in the next stage of their lives, and the coolest thing for me is I get to crop a new one, so I get to regenerate and restore myself and get younger. So they're getting older, I'm getting younger. I know they'll be back. I know I get to see them all, and they know where to find me, right here in the garden. Awesome!
But there was a time when Stephen's future was anything but guaranteed, and the lessons he's now passing on to his students were ones he had to first learn for himself.
I'm a skinny guy, you know, but as age happened and gravity took over, I got a little bigger. And as I started continuing to work with students, my habits were informed by their habits, and I started gaining weight. I started eating what they were eating. And it wasn't good. The choices that they made were the choices that I made, except I was 40, 50 years older than them. I didn't have the same metabolism. So literally, you know, I ballooned to close to 300 pounds. I was pre-diabetic, I was cirrhotic in my liver, I was on God knows how many milligrams of Lipitor a day, and just getting sicker and fatter. And what'd that beget? Be getting sicker and fatter. It's just like an endless cycle of medication and doctors and bills and clinics. It took a near heart attack, it took a collapse, it took a whole lot of pain to get me to a point of change. So it was time for me to take control of my life, and literally I've lost over 100 pounds simply by eating the food that I grow with kids in school. It's been game-changing. And the kids love eating it. They didn't know half the stuff that we eat on a daily basis is food. And again, 10 years ago, I couldn't name 10 kinds of vegetables. Now I grow 37 kinds of fruits, vegetables, and herbs in school with kids. Man, I'm the luckiest guy alive. I have no agriculture background, no science background. I got a little understanding of what's going on. I'm not altogether stupid, don't get me wrong. But, like, you know, you put a seed in the ground, it's gonna grow. But what I really am is a people farmer. You know, I grow relationships. This whole thing starts with seeds. People planted seeds with me, and I am still continuing to germinate and give fruit. And I believe that, you know, the children are my seeds. Listen, kids who are fat are less effective in school. They have lower self-esteem. They tend to get bullied. They tend to bully other kids. They tend not to feel good about themselves. So by informing them and moving them towards good health habits, along with academic success, wow. Why didn't I start this years ago? This isn't rocket science. This is love. And let's spread a little more of it.
Even a force of nature can't change the world all by himself. Stephen's wife Lizette and their 21-year-old daughter Michaela have also become two vital cogs in the work of the Green Bronx Machine.
I'm from the corporate space, investment banking, private sector. It's a different ROI, right? I wasn't happy, and it was getting harder and harder for me to, what I like to say, pour the Kool-Aid. I just couldn't, I was really not happy, and I'd come here, and the kids are just, they're just amazing, right? They're just a hug away, you know, and they just need you to talk to them and, you know, and connect. So I quit my job. Stephen and I we're here. Stephen travels a lot, spreading the word, and I am here full time. And I walk in here every morning and I'm smiling.
When I was about 9 or 10 or 11, I didn't understand the magnitude of the everyday work my dad was accomplishing in his classrooms. I just saw rowdy kids, and I saw my dad, who was just this bundle of never-ending energy, and I saw plants, and it didn't really click for me what the connection was at that age. But as I got older and as I was able to understand and comprehend the intricacies of engaging students and working with children from all kinds of backgrounds, I realized what plants meant for my dad. It meant this was how I was going to get my students engaged, and this is how I'm going to involve them and make them feel loved. Just how plants need love, that's what I will show them.
On the flip side, we're getting older, so this is the future. So if we're not investing in our own future today, what's our future gonna look like? So I'll give you an example. We have kids asking us for salad. Well, in some places that's perfectly normal, but we're here, you know, in the middle of the South Bronx, and kids are asking us for salad. I know it sounds kind of corny, but healthy bodies, healthy minds, right? What you're feeding your body inevitably impacts your thinking. And they'll ask for it. They'll say, do you have an apple, Mrs. Ritz? Or do you have, do you have, a tangerine? Or the other day we had clementines. Oh my, they didn't know what a clementine was. Oh, now it's their favorite fruit, you know? So I like to believe that we're doing that.
Eating healthy is the guise, but the heart of the matter is the work that we're doing here is a lot more psychological and a lot more emotional than people can take it at face value. It's not just about changing health, and it's not just about changing waistlines. It's about changing hearts and about changing minds. And I think we're accomplishing that without even putting a name to it.
Garden time. Garden time. ¡Sí se puede!
The most popular class at CS55 has even become a motivating tool for other teachers to use. Garden Time with Mr. Ritz is earned all throughout the school day, and the faculty sees Stephen's lessons with the kids come to fruition, in homeroom, but also at their actual homes.
It has impacted not only my students, but the parents, to teach them how to cook healthy. So I'm so glad that it's here, and I want to be a part of it. You can see the difference. They're more alert, their hands are raised, all my students' hands are up, but you can tell the difference when they come in. If they have soda and cookies and chips in the morning, they're more groggy, they don't want to participate, they want to sleep, and the attitude, the behavior seems a little more aggressive.
I used to have students drinking soda before 8 a.m. They'll come in with soda and chips in their hands. And I hear them say, "Oh, Mr. Reese is coming." He's earned the respect that the kids have for him. He's earned it, because there are other adults here that they really don't care about. And children, they think that they don't see things, they do watch everything. If you don't care about me, I don't care about you. But he cares about them, and it's reciprocal.
Stephen's work is inspiring. The results he gets are incredible. He's making a real change that's starting to be felt far outside the confines of the South Bronx. His title as one of the most influential teachers in this country is undisputed. You would think that Stephen Ritz could basically command his own salary at just about any school in the land. And you'd probably be right. But Stephen wouldn't know, because believe it or not, his is, for all intents and purposes, a volunteer position. And there's no price tag that can be put on why he does what he does.
My why is simple. I am a man on a mission, and I am determined to end hunger and poverty, as well as address the educational inequities of this community on a wholly systemic basis. And sometimes to do that, you've got to step away from the system, say it's broken, and advocate for change. There's no line item in anyone's budget for a guy like me. I get that, but that doesn't mean there's not a place for me. It's about getting in here earlier, staying later, working smarter, touching more lives, and literally working to combat some of the most Herculean epidemics of our lifetime. Realize the face of hunger in this community is now obesity, and the rest are stunted, shunted, and in pain. And neither side of that coin is acceptable to me. We can end hunger and poverty in this lifetime, and business as usual is no longer an option. And that's what this model is all about. That a locally grown community effort, our little green garden in the middle of the South Bronx, if you will, is a model for so much more. That we can, we must, and we will. And that seeds well planted can give us a crop of epic and abundant proportions.
You know, after filming over 100 episodes of Growing a Greener World, we've always said that we travel the country to tell the stories of people and places doing great things for the planet through organic gardening and healthy lifestyles. But I have to tell you that I don't think we've ever told the story of somebody that's impacted me more emotionally than this one. Stephen Ritz and the Green Bronx Machine. I came home after spending 2 full days here, emotionally spent. Just watching the interaction he has with the kids and the love and the fact that he does it for free. I mean, he doesn't, it's all volunteer, 12 hours a day, 6:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night, 6 days a week. And you know what he says to that? He says it's okay, because he's more worried about the outcome than the income. And it shows, because when I talk to the kids about that, they all say how much that they love him. And I mentioned that to Steve, and he says to that, yeah, he said, that's my job, because I'm there to love them until they can learn to love themselves. And I can't think of a better way to tell a story than that. Here's to Stephen Ritz and the Green Bronx Machine and PS 55.
I mostly eat vegetable soup.
What I like about Mr. Ritz's class is that we get to cook, we get to have fun.
I am the next Mr. Ritz because when I grow up, I want to be a gardener, just like him.
I'll be eating salad, tomatoes, and stuff like that, and I'll push my mom through it too.
I used to eat like a cow, and then now I don't eat like a cow anymore. I kind of eat like a chicken.
Hey, say hi, Mom. Hi, Grandma.
I'm Joe Lample. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders, who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a Greener World, it's more than a movement, It's our mission. I've met literally thousands of gardeners from all over the world. We grow different things, we grow in different ways, we grow in different places, and we grow for different reasons. But there's one common thread that connects all gardeners. We love experiencing other people's gardens. And I'm not just talking about those painstakingly beautiful public gardens, you know, the ones where you pay a fee just to get through the gate. We actually get more viewer requests to go behind the scenes to the private gardens of everyday gardeners. And take it from me, that's where the real learning and the best inspiration usually takes place.
When I was little, I used to go spend some time with my grandmother in the summer. She had a beautiful garden and she would take me out there, show me the flowers. We'd pick blackberries together and she'd just show me how you grow a garden, and that really got me started. My mom loved to garden as well, and so we would garden together. And then by the time I was 16, I started growing my own vegetable garden. I would grow tomatoes and zucchinis, that type of thing, and I really loved it. And I do think that the early seeds came from my grandmother.
Those seeds took off, and they haven't stopped growing. Susan Mulvihill has spent her life in the garden as a columnist for the Spokesman Review in Eastern Washington State, as a master gardener in Spokane County, as the co-author of the Northwest Gardener's Handbook, and as the creator of Susan's in the Garden, a popular website and blog that I personally have been following for years. Susan's passion is gardening and inspiring that same passion in others. And believe me, you don't have to be around her long to realize that passion is contagious. Well, Susan, I have to laugh because as we were pulling up here, the GPS was sending me down the road, but I saw your perennial bed and I knew right away this was your place. A gardener definitely lives here.
Yes, do you think I have enough flowers?
I don't know that you can ever have enough flowers, but you have done a great job here. This is definitely a showstopper. So talk to me about what you have here.
I have planted just about every kind of flower that I love.
There are so many pollinators right here on these flowers. It's incredible. Is this year-round, or you cut it back, and what do you do with it in the wintertime?
It dies out in the fall, and we cut it down and just have a bare patch here. But it gets covered with snow during the winter, so you don't see it.
Yep, I bet it does. One of the first things you learn when talking to Susan is that she definitely follows the golden rule of gardening. It's better to work with Mother Nature than against her, and that means knowing your climate.
So we get about 16 inches of rain in the springtime, and it's a semi-arid climate, so it's really quite dry. That's because the Cascade Mountains in the middle of Washington State rob us of all of our moisture. Then we get a hot summer, hot, dry summer. In the fall, we have beautiful fall colors, and in the winter, we get about 46 inches of snow, sometimes more than that. Our season is roughly from the middle of May to the middle of September, sometimes a little later, so it's quite a short growing season. Because we live in a dry climate, we really have to conserve our water. We're on a well, and it's a limited amount of water that we get from it, so we have to be really smart about the way we water. I use a lot of mulch on the beds around my plants, especially in the vegetable garden, and we use a drip irrigation system that we run just in the morning, and it really cuts down on the amount of evaporation, plus it puts the water right at the roots where it needs to be.
Now, when many people hear terms like water conservation and drip irrigation, they start thinking in restrictive terms, what you can't do or can't have. But that doesn't have to be the case. You simply have to be smart about how you use water in your landscape. If you are, even things like a water feature are fair game in the garden.
This is a place that is near and dear to my heart.
Wow.
I've wanted a water garden for a long time, so many years ago we dug a big hole. We don't have any rocks in our soil. And we put in this pond. It's filled with water lilies, koi carp, a few goldfish,
Lots of insects and pollinators. Look at those.
Yeah, they really are drawn to that water.
I love how natural this looks too. This is amazing.
Thank you. That was one of our goals. We had to go out and find a lot of rocks to put around the edge. Like to have a little bit of a natural waterfall.
But what I love is all the honeybees and other pollinators that are taking advantage of the access to all this water. It's amazing.
Right. They really need the water in order to survive, and this is one of their best sources for it.
Yeah, you gave them a good one for sure. Every gardener has to go through a learning curve, and Susan was no different. Hers came when she and her husband Bill first moved to the Pacific Northwest in the late 70s and realized they weren't in Southern California anymore.
So we bought this 5 acres, and as the house was being built, we were looking at it thinking, oh my gosh, here's this big blank piece of land. What are we going to do with it? There was a front lawn, a back lawn, a little bit of a foundation planting, and that was it. So we sat down with pen and paper and started drawing out plans. First thing we needed to do was to put in a windbreak because we live in an area that gets quite a lot of wind, and so that was an important first thing. So we knew open property is not good for attracting birds because they want to feel safe. And so that's why we planted thickets of shrubs, that type of thing, lots of trees. Having a big piece of property gave us the opportunity to plant a lot of things, and having an orchard was right at the top of our list. We were really excited about growing tree fruits, so we planted 12 of them the first fall, and by the next spring we only had 3 left because the deer had wiped out the other 9. The hardest part about gardening in Spokane is that we have an awful lot of critters to deal with. Whether it's deer, moose, porcupines, turkeys, squirrels, you name it, we get it, and it makes gardening very challenging. We didn't ever have to deal with deer down in California, and so we didn't know that was a problem. So we did a good job of planting everything that's their favorite food. That was a learning curve. So we had to start over, which was really frustrating since trees take a long time to mature. But we did it, and we still have an orchard.
Okay, well, I bet this is your favorite place.
It is. I love working in here. I love growing healthy, fresh produce, and it's where I really spend the majority of my gardening time.
Yep, tons of raised beds, totally healthy plants, very diverse. You have it all going on right here. Susan has a total of 26 raised beds that she uses throughout the growing season, and they provide her and Bill with nearly all of their food. But over the years, she's come up with a whole host of improvisations that make gardening easier and even extend the growing season. So I like this hoop house that you have here out in your garden, but here we are in the middle of the summer. You've got things growing in it now.
Yes.
But I'm betting that this is mainly for the winter time.
It is mainly for the winter time. I wanted to experiment to see if I could grow veggies through the winter months, which is usually not possible. Bill and I built a hoop house that is lightweight, it's very portable, we can move it around in the garden. It covers 2 raised beds, and in it I grow really cold-tolerant vegetables.
So the key then is to find the most cold-tolerant varieties, and that's it? No supplemental heating or anything else?
No, we really wanted to have a goal of not using any electricity whatsoever, so it's really just the sunshine that's warming it up.
So how much do you think you have invested in that whole thing?
Maybe $200. And it should last a long time.
Okay, now this is totally getting my attention right here. Those are clearly pole beans.
Yes.
But I love that you got them growing up and over this arbor because, you know, the classic approach, of course, as you know, is the teepee.
Right, and I grew them that way for years, and I'd stand out in the heat, and I'd have to be looking through the vines trying to find out where the beans were. So one year I had a light bulb moment. I thought, why couldn't I grow something up and over a pathway? And then maybe, just maybe, the beans would hang down on the inside. So we tried it the next year, and lo and behold, they do hang down on the inside.
So I bet you'll never go back to the classic teepee again.
Never.
Right. Well, I love this idea. Susan, in the short time I've been walking through your garden, I cannot help but notice all the beneficial insects and pollinators flying everywhere. And I know that's not by accident. So talk to me about some of the things that you have specifically done to make that happen.
Right. It was actually for selfish reasons. We wanted to have as high a production in the vegetable garden and the orchard as possible. So we knew we wanted to attract in all different types of pollinators. That meant we planted flowering shrubs, perennials, all different kinds of blooming plants to attract different types of pollinators.
So diversity is key to get a diverse range of beneficials.
Absolutely. You don't want a monoculture.
Right. Now, one of the things that you've done, which I find totally amazing, is the insect hotel. So tell me about that. What was the inspiration and how did you build yours?
When we were in Switzerland, we saw an insect hotel in the middle of a botanical garden, and we thought that is the coolest thing. And then we saw more examples of it on our travels, and so we decided we absolutely had to add one to our garden.
And I bet you could not wait to leave your fancy European vacation to come home and build your own, right?
Just about.
So how long have you had this up and running now?
This is its second year. The first year it was kind of quiet. Then this spring, oh my gosh, there was so much going on because the mason bees were hatching from there. They were coming out, mating, and then laying eggs and starting that whole cycle all over again. So now it's quiet.
Yeah, well, just wait till next year.
I know, I can't wait.
Well, like Susan, the first time I saw an insect hotel, I knew I had to have one for the garden farm. So naturally, I recruited our DIY guy here, Todd Brock, to help us build one.
Well, building is a stretch. There's really not a lot of building involved with this. This is a super simple project.
Well, really, we're just mimicking what happens in nature, what they would go to, insects, beneficial pollinators, solitary bees. We're just really replicating that.
Yeah, and you're putting it into a self-contained unit that then you can put near the garden or flower beds or wherever you need to in the landscape. But this is it, and it's totally free. I'm telling you, Joe, literally free, not a dime spent. This is all scrap wood, found materials from the landscape. If you're spending money on this project, you're doing it wrong.
Well, I love that. And so let's start with the basic structure right now. Really, it just looks like a birdhouse pretty much.
Yeah, the size and shape is dictated only by what you have on hand. These are scrap boards that I had in the workshop from a different project. So that's why it's this size and shape. Yours might be the size of a small birdhouse. I've also seen these take up the entire wall of a garden shed or a barn. So it's entirely up to you and what you've got to work with.
Well, and it just dictates how much of what you find outside you're going to use to fill it up. And that is the point. All of these are found objects. We have sticks and twigs and...
Right, and you're not limited by what you would find in nature. You've got flower pots, cord bricks, work great, the kind with the holes in them. You can use cinder blocks. You know what, drinking straws are a great addition to something like this. The key is you're looking for holes. You want nooks and crannies, crevices, cracks. That's what's going to replicate the tunnels, the burrows that these insects would be creating or using out in nature, and that's the key. So once you've got your box and you collect a bunch of materials, you just start stacking, and the idea is to sort of take like objects and sort of keep it all together. Okay. So, you know, maybe throw a couple of those sticks in there.
Okay.
Yeah, so you keep the like items together, and then you just use more scrap wood to create these little compartments. And the compartments is sort of the thing that makes this an insect hotel, as opposed to just a box full of yard waste. Once you start to see this artsy and geometric pattern happening, you're on the right track. Now it's an insect hotel.
I like how it looks already, and we're just getting started here.
Joe, you mentioned how artsy this project is, and with art there are no rules. With insect hotels, there are 2 rules, as you found out from Susan.
Right, you got to have the roof.
Yeah, that's super important. That creates a little bit of shelter, and then again, that's just what insects would do in nature. They use overhangs. They get in under things. I mean, they're not just out there out in the open. So this is a little bit of shelter for them, which they would look for on their own.
Right, and then when you put it out in the garden or wherever this is going to live, you want to give it a south-facing orientation.
And that's for sun, right?
Yeah, that's for sun. That gets them up and going earlier in the morning, gets them warmed up, and gets them on their way to do what they do best, right?
Well, then this is ready for them. We can mount this in the garden. You can put it on a fence post. You could mount it to a tree. Again, whatever works for you in your situation.
And the best place for us is the garden farm. Now we're going to have all the information you need to build your own insect hotel, as well as other ideas and inspiration. It'll be on our website under the show notes for this episode. The website address, it's the same as our show name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. All right, what else do we have room for? Just as in any great garden, it's easy to lose track of time in Susan's garden. From the big ticket items to the little things, there are no unimportant details. It all comes together in its own ecosystem, everything playing off of everything else, and it all just works. It's all fascinating, and it all teaches you something if you just take the time to notice. And that's a big part of why Susan and her website have become such a wonderful resource for gardeners everywhere. So as you went about creating your garden and putting in the plants, the various plants, you know, I've already commented on the fact that you've done a great job with your layering, and I know that's also beneficial to the choices that the birds make for where they put their habitats and the food they eat.
Right, so a lot of the low shrubs provided a thicket, so if a hawk came through or something they were trying to get away from, they had somewhere to go into and hide from. Then the taller plants tend to have berries, and so the birds are coming up into the trees, or maybe they're a sentry bird and they're keeping an eye out for predators, and so they're maybe up at the top of a tree. So the layering was important.
Well, and then you have, you know, the hawthorns and the other things that put on berries during the wintertime when nothing else is out there. But in your case, you do have other things out there. A lot of gardeners, for example, with the perennials, they want to clean up and tidy up their garden in the fall.
Yes.
But you, by design, it's not because you're lazy, because I know that's not the case, but you like to leave those seed heads in place.
Right. It is so important to do that because the seeds in those seed heads are an important nutrition source during the winter for many different types of birds. So when I'm cleaning up my yard, I'm leaving all sorts of seed heads from things like bee balm, black-eyed Susans, and coneflowers because I want to make sure they have that food source. I don't want to take away that food.
Yeah, so that's critically important. And in fact, in the wintertime, a lot of people provide supplemental feeding, but if a bird had their way, they would want to just try to forage naturally, right?
Right. There are some things that we provide that would be hard for them to find, but they also like the natural food, obviously.
And you are a big birder, so in addition to providing their habitats for them, you're also capturing a lot of their action and your camera shots, and then those videos that you post all the time, which I love, by the way. So a lot of people want to be better photographers with nature and especially with the birds in their gardens, and you do a great job of that. What are some of the tips that you can share for that?
Well, the first thing I want people to realize is that I don't have a big, fancy, expensive camera. I have a very simple but nice quality point and shoot camera that has awesome zoom, and that's allowed me to get some pictures of birds that are far off. In my office, I keep the window screens off my windows year-round because I want to be able to open the window and capture pictures, usually hanging out the window, seeing what I can get, and usually they're not aware of me, which is nice. You don't want to take pictures through a glass pane because that distorts the image.
And that's the same camera that you're also using for your videos, right?
Yes, and you know, I love getting still images because it shows the beauty of the birds, maybe in a tree or next to a flower or something. But when I got the video, it opened up a whole new world to me because I was able to capture a behavior that they were doing, and then I could share it with people on the internet, and it's been so popular by so many people.
Well, it tells so much more of the story, too. You know, gardening and photography do seem to go hand in hand. I've been taking pictures for a very long time, started with a basic point and shoot, simply to document what I planted where, pictures of the plant tags, that's always important, and then progress of the plants through the season and any problems that developed. But you know, the more you use your camera in the garden, the more you realize there are so many opportunities. And it's just like gardening, the more you do it and the more you experiment, the better you get. And the fact is, you don't need a fancy camera like this, but many of us end up here. But a basic point and shoot these days is so good. And who does not have the camera on their bodies at all times these days, right? Pay careful attention to lighting. Early mornings and late evening often provide the nicest natural lighting for photographs. Lucky for you, those are also excellent times to be out in the garden anyway, out of the harsh heat and oppressive sun. Sometimes you're trying to shoot a wide shot of a huge area, but as a general rule, don't be afraid to move closer to your subject. Extreme close-ups of flowers, insects, fruits, and leaves can make for fascinating photos. Even if you don't capture the entire image, sometimes a partial image that leaves something to the imagination is most interesting. Understand that just like planting handfuls of seeds, not all of your photos are going to be keepers. For every nice shot that I end up with, I probably take at least 20 shots trying to get it. This is certainly an easier and cheaper concept to warm up to, now that most people shoot digitally instead of on film that has to be developed at a cost. Go through your photos regularly. Weed out what you don't like, but take the time to edit, print out, and maybe even frame or hang the good ones. Your own garden photos make for really personalized gifts or cool conversation art pieces that no one else has. It'll inspire you to shoot more and garden more too.
The garden that Bill and I have created together feels so complete to me. I love the flowers, I love all the wildlife that we get to experience every day, and I love all the food that comes out of the garden. I think there's been a huge disconnect between the old days when everyone had a garden in their yard and now. What happens is kids go to a grocery store, they have no idea where potatoes come from. They don't know that a tomato grows on a plant. People need to know how to grow their own vegetables so that they can lead a healthy lifestyle and eat their own food that's been grown without any chemicals. Because I'm a garden writer, I feel it's very important to practice what I preach. I'm constantly giving advice to my readers, but I want them to know that I do exactly what I say. I do not believe in using chemicals. I do not use them in my garden, and I feel that they have such an adverse effect on our environments. I think that society really needs to break the habit of reaching for the can of chemicals. I believe we should all be good stewards of the environment, and as gardeners, we have the opportunity to make that choice every time we step into the garden.
Well, meeting Susan and Bill and spending time with them was like catching up with longtime friends. And then following Susan over the years through her blog and website and her photos and videos told me that she was my kind of gardener. The kind of gardener that understands how everything in nature is connected in one way or another, and how our actions can either add or take away from the overall health and biodiversity of this environment. Thankfully, though, they take their role as stewards very seriously, and because of that, this has become a pretty incredible place for all who come to visit.